So today I'm going to be talking about Georges Clemenceau. Um, he's a really important figure of the early 20th century, and yeah, let's get right to it. So he was this really prominent figure, especially in the Treaty of Versailles negotiations, and he was French, and he was really persistent on the terms of Treaty of Versailles being extremely harsh. Like, I'm not even talking about, yeah, they were bad, let's punish them. No, no, no. This guy, he wanted Germany to be completely incapacitated economically, kind of as a punishment for how they had treated France during the war. And of course, France ended up being victorious, among the victors, and so that's why Clemenceau and France were really harsh on them. They wanted Germany to be crippled. And even if I'm not mistaken, which I may be, he would then be, yeah, definitely. He was kicked out of office after Versailles because he was seen as being too lenient, and he was extremely harsh, which I don't know. It's kind of funny for me. But anyway, I find a lot of things in history funny, as you can probably tell by now. So, I mean, on the British side, David Lloyd George, he was more of a yes, let's be harsh, but to a point. Let's not completely quibble them. Then we have Woodrow Wilson, who was kind of an idealist, and he also didn't suffer as much because the U.S. came in 1917, so they didn't bear the really harsh parts of the war. Oh, he did suffer, but not as much as France and Britain, so that's why Woodrow Wilson was more lenient. So, well, this reputation Clemenceau had, it earned him the nickname of the Tiger. Actually, there's political cartoons of this, and it just says the Tiger. And well, the guy did have kind of an iconic mustache, but his fierce attitude, his I want this for Germany, that's what got him his nickname. And those 6.6 billion pounds that Germany was forced to pay as reparations, he wanted, I don't remember the exact figure he asked for, but I think it was so much higher. And what Britain and the US wanted was quite lower than 6.6 billion, but Clemenceau got that amount to increase. So that's the bit of the introduction of who Clemenceau was. Let's get into his life now. So he was born in 1841, and he was actually quite well educated and even studied medicine, considering the guy was, well, a politician after that. I mean, quite a stark contrast from a doctor to a politician. He studied in Monmouth and was appointed the town's mayor in 1870. I think he was 29 years old. Yes, 29 years old, which is quite young. And yeah, he was mayor, but he had studied medicine, so hey. And then he was also a member of the Chamber of Deputies from 1876 to 1893, and then 1902 he became a senator for Var, and held his post until 1920 when he was kicked out for being too lenient on the terms of the treaty. So in March 1906 he was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, of Home Affairs, and then 7 months after that he was appointed Prime Minister of France. And well, in France, they don't have the best history in terms of keeping a stable government, so it was expected his government would last quite short. And well, it did last for 2.75 years, so not even 3 years, which may seem short because normally the governments last 4 years, but this is actually considered a quite long government, and it's the second longest government in the history of the Third Republic of France. Second longest, and it lasted not even 3 years. I'll leave that there. So, Between 1914 and 1917, so the first 3 years of the war, the First World War, or the Great War, as it was more commonly known. Well, Clemenceau, he was really anti-war. He was more of a pacifist in that sense. He didn't like the not pacifist. I'm sorry, no. He didn't like the way the French military was being used. Yes. So he wasn't a pacifist per se. He was just, if we're gonna use the military, let's use it right. Let's not do whatever they are doing. Let's use it properly. And that's what Clemenceau's stance was. And then 1917, November, he was appointed again as Prime Minister and said, okay, we are going to sort things out. And, well, by that time, with the American help, they won the war and was then at Versailles negotiations, was appointed to lead the negotiations. Yeah. And, well, Clemenceau, he knew what the people wanted. He realized that the people wanted no mercy and they were not going to take anything less. So that's why when he went into Versailles for the negotiations, he just was as sharp as you get. He was just extremely harsh. And wanted Germany to be completely crippled, not for the sake of destroying the citizens, but rather to try and avoid another war, to try and really make Germany unable to ever wage war again, especially against France, considering they shared a border. Well, I mean, from outside perspective, from British, American, and most certainly German perspective, you may think he was this extremely harsh figure, psychopath, tiger. But in France, he was just a realist. He was a normal figure, demanding normal stuff. He wasn't going overboard, he was just demanding what the people wanted, what the people thought they deserved. And, well, France was where most of the fighting took place, where most of the trenches were. So you can understand this logic. And, well, even in Versailles negotiations, he was kind of not a mean girls moment, but certainly talked about Woodrow Wilson behind his back, saying that he was too idealist and that the French people deserved to get what they wanted because the US, they had entered in the last year of the war in 1917, they just fought in 1918. They had been profiting before that by selling weapons. There was no fighting on US soil. So then the US comes along and says, guys, let's be lenient. Well, no, the French people think, hell yeah, we deserve to inflict the punishment they deserve, so really tough one. And of course, like I said, Clemenceau reflected these views. So, well, when the actual Versailles Treaty was signed, people of France did not like it. Not because it was too harsh, no. Because, well, it was too watered down, especially by David Lloyd George and Wilson. So it was too lenient. I mentioned this before, the people, like I said, they wanted harsh, and Clemenceau had to give in some areas. He did get, some colonies, reparations, the Sommermenschen part of Germany, they got got a lot of stuff, but not as much as they wanted. So, well, by January 1920, Clemenceau's time was up. He was just moved out of power. By this point, by the way, he was 79 years old, meaning that in the Versailles negotiations, he was 78. Wilson and David Lloyd George were much younger than he was. And he still managed to keep his ground and, well, earn the reputation, the Tiger. Um, and well, even after he left the political scene, he retired, he kept on speaking out and was starting to warn about how Germany was, yeah, they were harsh, but not as harsh as they could have been. And so someday it would reemerge as a potential power and wage war against Europe, which they did. But Clemenceau did not know that, and he didn't live to see it, but he did predict it. And the reason, Hitler got so popular was because of the terms of Versailles, the hatred towards them. So, yeah, Clemenceau was right. Although if he had been harsher, there'd be more hate, but there'd be less resources as to be able to wage war. So, yeah. And, well, he wrote in his memoirs, which he named The Grandeur and Misery, how European diplomacy had basically, was weird, and it was a shadow of its former self. And what's really freaky of all this is that he predicted that the worst year for France, and the year that would be, the worst year for France in terms of Germany, like attacking them or anything, was 1940. That was the year the Nazis invaded France and took control of it during the Second World War. And he predicted that. And he died in 1929. But he still predicted that. If he predicted, I guess he's predicting Germany rising again. Because, you have to be a bit dumb if you don't think that. But predicting the year, he could have said any year, he said 1940. And that was the year the Germans took over France. So yeah, that is Clemenceau. That is a very brief summary of Clemenceau. And yeah, he is the tiger. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Really interesting figure, really prominent one, and it's just Versailles. He wanted a lot. He didn't get as much, and he still got kicked out of power because the terms weren't what the people wanted. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you liked it. I hope you found it interesting, and yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.